Hi folks, welcome back to Make Do and Mend. Happy chilly Monday. We had a great weekend of weather and now we've got a couple more days of kind of -10 weather, but that's the Canadian winter, and of course that's when my heater just kicked in as soon as I started. But today we are going to be doing something kind of fun, a little bit different from some of the activities that we've been doing. And we're going to talk about a couple of different ways to make your own stencil. So I have this bag that I'm going to be printing on the other side. This bag was one that we silk screened probably 2 years ago now. And this is what we use to actually carry around our silk screening kit in, but we use a really similar method for our silk screening to what we're going to be doing today. And there's a couple of ways that you can approach this. I have a stencil here that it's not fully cut out yet. It's just part of it has been cut out. So it's kind of difficult to see where the letters are, but it was cut on our Cricut, which is a tool that we keep at the tool library. We don't loan it out to different homes just because it's got a lot of bits and pieces and it's very particular for how it operates. So what I'll do next week is a demo on the Cricut itself, and if you are interested in having an image cut out on the Cricut, you can send us a message or send us a comment, and then we'll draw from whoever submits, and we'll cut that one live on next week's demo. And this week I'll show you how to cut one by hand using one of your own drawings. So I went ahead and I created this little drawing of these little ghosts ahead of time. This is loosely inspired by the ghost Polaroid in Beetlejuice, because I just watched it a couple weekends ago and it's sort of been on my mind. And yeah, so I'm going to show you how to transfer this onto the vinyl, and then how to take the vinyl and put that onto a piece of fabric. And I'll also show you how to weed one of these stencils that's already been cut by the Cricut. And then I'll show you the painting as well. So I'll do this one first, and then I'll do this one. And while this one is drying, we can work on that. And hopefully it'll be dry enough for us to go back and do a second coat on this little one. So I will flip you over. Decent overhead view. Let's put you here, and then I got back my good tripod this week, but there's still no good way to do this. I don't know how those life hacks get made, but I'll move you around accordingly. So when you're making a drawing for a stencil, you want to make sure that all of your shapes are closed. And what I mean by that is one line will always come back and connect to where it started. So these little shapes are closed and the bigger shapes are closed. And then the shape that's surrounding them is also closed. So it doesn't have to just be a silhouette. You can have other details that are part of it, but all of the shapes have to close on themselves. So hopefully that makes sense. And I've got some adhesive back vinyl that has a paper backing. And what we need to do is trace this onto here. And the best way that I've found to do that is by just pushing really hard with a ballpoint pen all the way around each edge. And you have to kind of go back and forth on the lines a little bit and try to follow the lines as accurately as possible. And this will just kind of emboss it into the vinyl. You can do another method that's kind of similar to this, where you cover the back of an image in like a graphite pencil and then trace around it, and it'll transfer the image onto your work surface. But what I find with the vinyl is the graphite can kind of smudge. So this, because it's embossing it right into the vinyl, it can't go anywhere. Did we do that edge? I don't remember. I traced some of this out ahead of time, but then I taped it down and I think I moved where it was. So we'll just do the whole thing. So I've almost got these completely traced out, and I'm just kind of going back and forth with the pen just to make sure it really embosses into the vinyl, because what I found with this vinyl is it's a little harder to see where the embossed lines are. But I think I've enclosed all of my shapes, so I'm gonna just trace it with the pen just so you can see better what I'm doing. And then the next step is to take one of these little X-Acto craft knives and go around all of these lines. And you want to push hard enough, I'll show you on a piece over here maybe, push hard enough that you're going through the vinyl, but not through the paper, or at least not all the way through the paper. When you're cutting things on the Cricut, it's actually set for this. It's called a kiss cut. It's just kissing the vinyl, but not cutting through the paper backing. And what that does is it just keeps everything together. So this is sort of the trickiest part of cutting out the stencils, because you only get one shot at it. I'm gonna cut off this excess just so the border around whatever your drawing is. You want to leave at least an inch on either side, or on all four sides, I should say. And the parts on the drawing that are in black are the parts where the ink is going to be coming through in this case. So all these little black dots and this black exterior will all get discarded. Just checking to make sure this has gone all the way through. And then I'll go back and I'll cut these little eyes. Smaller shapes are the hardest to try to do evenly. And even on the Cricut, the smaller you go, the harder it has, harder time it has sort of picking out those details. But these came out okay, and we don't need those. So we'll just get them out of the way. And I find it's easier to move the vinyl than it is to try to drag your knife around the curves. So if you're almost holding the knife a bit stationary and then moving the vinyl to sort of trace those lines, that's the easiest way to do it. And then on longer lines, it's easier to just drag the knife without pushing too hard. And this part's going to get peeled out. Oh, there we go. If there's like resistance where you think you might have missed a spot, just go back and trace it again with the knife. Don't try to pull it because you could tear the vinyl, which might then wreck your whole design, which you don't want. Okay, and then to take this and put it onto our fabric or whatever it is that you're stenciling on, rather than just trying to pick up this whole thing and put it down. I'm actually going to grab a bigger piece. Lint roller that comes on a thing like this. And basically what the objective of this is, this will kind of seal the whole design together. And you just want to use like a little plastic card to stick everything together so that when I peel it up off of backing, all my pieces are where I would want them to be in my original design. And then to place it down onto the fabric, you just want to gently center it wherever you're wanting it to be, and then start pushing from the center out in each direction in sort of a Union Jack pattern. So like a T shape and then an X shape, from always working from the center out, and that'll anchor it down, and then you can go back and smooth it down with your plastic card. And then this peels up. Transfer tape's not quite as sticky as the lint roller, but lint roller is less sticky than masking tape. So masking tape would be too sticky for this. This is about as sticky as you can go without potentially compromising your stencil. And then I'm actually gonna keep this backing piece just for dabbing off extra paint. What I have is Speedball fabric silkscreening ink. And this is great because it's permanent on fabric. But if you don't have this, or you don't want to buy this whole tub, you can get this stuff called fabric medium that will turn any acrylic paint into something that's permanent on fabric. So then you can just, I think it's about a half and half ratio, but definitely check your manufacturer's instructions. You can do a combo of acrylic paint and fabric medium, just mix the two together really well. And that'll do something relatively similar to what this will do. And then I just have a sponge brush because you just want to kind of dab the paint in. So, and thin coats are always better than thick coats with something like this. Because if you do a really thick coat, the base is just not going to dry properly. So I'm dabbing off the excess onto a piece of paper and then doing just like an up and down motion just to kind of seal everything in. There's a bit of gray mixed in with this paint. So it's kind of a mottled black and gray look. That's all good. That's got its first coat. I'm gonna put that aside to dry. And I'm gonna put my lid on my paint just so it doesn't dry out. And this will be probably tricky for you to see, but I'll do it anyway. So all of these letters that have been cut out on the Cricut, they're already at that kiss cut stage, but you just need to use the edge of your knife just to sort of guide it off of the vinyl. And then anything that's got, you know, points like this, you want to be careful taking those up. And then anything like the D here that has a closed shape inside of it. So all your letter D's, your letter A's, your letter O's, letter P, letter Q. They'll all have that closed shape inside. So just be careful that you don't lose your middle. And you're not like tracing around each letter because it's already cut. You're just lifting up those edges. And then save this bit here. The one thing that isn't ideal about using lint roller is that this edge doesn't have any stickiness to it, so you have to kind of overlap to make sure that everything's covered. Same principle as the one that was cut by hand. Just sort of roll the backing paper off slowly, making sure all your middles and inside pieces are all stuck down. And then place it where you want. And then again, anchor the center. And then that Union Jack pattern, like so. again, slowly peeling off. This tape, actually, just start from this side. You can put these stencils onto lots of different things too. If you're putting them onto a t-shirt, you do want to make sure that it's sort of loosely stretched over a piece of cardboard. Otherwise it might kind of warp a little. This fabric doesn't have any stretch to it, so it's okay to just put something inside of it to protect it. Get these last pesky bits. That one doesn't really matter because it won't be where we're painting, so. But this one definitely does. I think this lint roller is pretty old, so the glue is kind of gummy, which is not ideal for trying to remove it, but it's also something that the more you practice, the easier and quicker it becomes. And just to try to prevent the stencil from bleeding, I'm just going to really lightly rub everything down. You don't want to like burnish it, like push really hard, because then it's going to stick and it's going to pop back up and it's going to have all that lint on it from the fabric, and then it's never going to stick again, which is not ideal. So I will put that right side up so you can see it. And then I will do the fun part, which is painting it. And again, dabbing off most of the excess paint from sponge brush. And I'm going to work from this side over just so I'm not dragging my arm across the paint. Getting all those edges sealed in. Almost there. And then I'll put this aside to dry. And we'll check on our first stencil. I don't have any like movie magic today with one already done. Yeah, you can see it perfectly. So there's still some patchy spots where the paint just hasn't covered. So take a very light touch with the brush and go back in and just do 1 second coat. And I'll do a check-in maybe later, just in our stories, once it's dried, and I'll peel these stencils off. You don't want to try and peel off a stencil while it's still wet, because you might smudge the ink. But now this is looking pretty even, and I'm going to leave these to dry, and check back in probably in about. I'm just checking in to do a little update on the stencils from this afternoon's live stream. I was going to do a story and then I thought it'll probably be longer than a minute and I don't want to get cut off, so I just did the 2 coats on the little ghosties and I peeled that off. It came out really nice and clean. And then I went back and I did a 2nd coat on the larger stencil. So I'm going to do a reveal of that now. It's still a bit tacky, which is weird because it's been a couple of hours. But I'm just going to be really careful with the peel and try not to let anything touch the surface of the tote bag. So I'm just gonna get all the big parts off now and then go back and peel the little bits with a knife. It didn't get 100% opaque because I didn't do a 3rd coat, but I thought in order to be able to show you tonight that I would need to do it now, and I wouldn't be able to do a 3rd coat. It would still be too wet. So tomorrow morning, once this has dried for a whole day, I will do a heat set. Hey folks, just a quick little check-in to show you the stencils from yesterday that I'm just about to heat set the ink on. So we have our little ghosty and our tote bag. I did unfortunately get a bit of a smudge on the tote bag because the ink was still a bit tacky when I was picking up the stencil. So that's a good piece of advice to wait until the ink is dry. And I'm just gonna cover them with a top sheet. And I have my iron set to cotton. And I'm gonna hold the iron in place for just a few seconds on each section and then lift it up and bring it to the next spot. And this basically just cures the ink so that it doesn't bleed and it's less prone to cracking. You can also put your garments in the dryer on like a tumble dry. And I'm just gonna go over each one twice. It won't really change anything cosmetically. They'll still look exactly the same. But now that ink is set in place and it's not going to bleed, it's not going to crack. If you are printing on like a t-shirt or something, when you're washing it, you do want to turn it inside out, if you can remember, because then it's just going to do less damage to that ink over time. And oh, just to show you, this is why you want to have a protective sheet underneath, because sometimes the ink can bleed in through the fibers. So if you have a piece of cardboard or something in behind when you're printing, you'll protect the other side of your garment and you'll also protect your work surface. So that concludes the 3-part series for this week on stenciling. And then next week, I'll see you all at 5 o'clock for stenciling with the Cricut. See you there.